Hello? 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 If you can hear this, it's not too late. I've returned to warn you. This is Time Pop, a podcast that discusses time travel and pop culture. There are spoilers. I've seen the future, and nothing is sacred to these folks. Your past, present, and future are sure to be ruined. Even if you could go back in time, as I have, you will never forget what you are about to hear. You've been warned. This is Time Pop.
Unselfishness. Whatever. Welcome, Chrononauts, as we guide you through the experience of time travel using pop culture as our blood sausage. We will be your constants. I am Des.
And I'm Ari.
And this is
Time Pop. Blood sausage?
I was going to say Groundhog, and then no. That's the line I probably most quote from this movie. I say, when someone's talking about people in general,
Yeah.
I'm just like, people are idiots. They eat blood sausage.
Have you ever had blood sausage?
I haven't.
It's good, actually.
Is it?
It's very rich and intensely flavored, but I had some when I was in Paris, and it's
Is
good.
it aptly named? Like, is it because of blood?
I mean, you kind of have to just don't think about what it is. Put that out of your mind.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's
all right.
Yeah.
Hey, go French. I didn't realize there's a French cuisine too. There's a lot of French stuff going on in this movie. So
oh yeah, that's right.
That would make sense. That
I don't know if it
that's
is French. I just had it in
that's
France.
Where yeah.
So.
All right. Welcome everybody. Today we are doing Groundhog Day, released February 12th, 1993. They missed Groundhog Day by 10 days. That must have been
on the release?
Yeah, because I could see if they just released it in the summer and who cares, but to come that close and miss it, I wonder if they had some special engagements on the second. Who knows? 101 minutes, PG, directed by the late, great Harold Ramis, responsible for directing Vacation and 4 episodes of The Office. Which is interesting. I'm actually going to dig those episodes up and see if they ring true to that. And we're going to digress right here, right now, Ari. He also directed a movie called Multiplicity.
Okay.
Have you seen Multiplicity?
I think I have.
Michael Keaton clones himself?
Yeah, probably. I just don't remember much of it.
All right. Let's talk. So obviously this isn't time travel in the general sense.
Groundhog Day?
No, multiplicity. But if you are cloning yourself, is that creating different timelines? Is that like an alternate reality split?
I think it's just a clone.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's like if you weren't here and then tomorrow you were because the other you...
Your clone.
Not your clone. You're the clone. So...
I could see how in some similar way having a clone could be like having an alternate timeline because they're leading a similar but separate life. Yeah.
And up to a moment, you guys are identical.
Yeah.
And then after that split, you're not.
Then you're not. Yeah.
I don't know. I thought about that a while ago and have been wanting to discuss it. And what better place than here and now? So yeah, I'm not going to try to squeeze it in the show. So don't worry about it. It is one of my favorite movies.
Multiplicity?
Oh my gosh. I love it so much. I'll never forget being in a jam-packed theater with my girlfriend at the time. And she was so embarrassed because I was the only one laughing. Like there was 500 people in this theater, all perfectly silent. And I was laughing my ass off.
From what I remember in the movie, like the more times he clones himself, the dumber the clones get. Is that this one?
Well, each clone kind of comes out for what he needs. Like the first time he clones himself, he needs kind of a homemaker. So that guy comes out a little dainty and cute and homemaker. And the next time he needs a guy to work. So that guy comes out a little rough and tumble and ready to do construction all day. But then the third clone is a copy of a copy. And that one's dumb, just like you would Xerox a Xerox a Xerox.
Okay, I remember, some of the clones were not as bright. Anyway.
The last clone. All right, I just had to have that conversation at some point. Written by Danny Rubin and Harold Ramis. And this, by all accounts, is Danny Rubin's, he spent his life working on this. Like, he moved to LA, he did a lot of writing, but this was a script he always came back to. And obviously, he hit a home run with this, and he hasn't been able to reproduce it ever since. So, way to go, Danny Rubin. If you're going to write one Hollywood movie, I think think he did a good job. Starring Bill Murray as Phil from Kingpin, Space Jam, and the recently released Zombieland Double Tap.
Space Jam.
Yeah. Andy McDowell. I've always wondered how this beautiful woman got the name Andy. Her name is Rosalie Anderson McDowell. So she just went with Andy for her stage name. From the prior mentioned Multiplicity. Chris Elliott from Get a Life. Get a Life I mentioned just because, have you ever heard of the band Handsome Boy Modeling School?
No.
He is responsible for naming in the show Get a Life. He signs up for the Handsome Boy Modeling School, and that's where this whole Scott will know about Handsome Boy Modeling School. I can't remember who it is. I think it might even be two DJs or a rapper and a DJ got together, so they called their duo the Handsome Boy Modeling School. Steven Tobolowsky as Needle Nose Ned has 270 credits, and he is just amazing. He is the epitome of a working actor that not only is he working hard, but he gets in movies that you actually see too. So I love him so much. Brian Doyle Murray as the MC, the sire of the ceremony. And then Rick Overton as one of the drunk guys that Phil goes driving around with. I wrote him down because he played Rufus in the Bill and Ted's TV animated series. So connected, our worlds collide. Rotten Tomatoes, critics versus audience. Critics gave it a 96. Audience gave it an 88. This came after, and there was almost a point where they were going to pursue legal action. We've had a movie on our list, 12:01 p.m. You notice it's always, whenever you talk about Groundhog Day, they're like other movies like Groundhog Day, Ark, and 12:01 p.m. shows up a lot. And that was a short story. The reason I have a hard time finding the movie is because there's an episode of a TV show basically did 12:01 p.m. and then there's a TV movie about it. So there has never been a theatrical release of 12:01. But that was, as near as we can tell, that's the first adaptation of this reliving of a day over and over again.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is Groundhog Day the first movie of its kind, or have there been other movies that have this repeat theme?
I think as far as movies go, this is the first theatrical release, because this short story was written in 1973. So that didn't predate this movie very far. People who passed on the lead role, Tom Hanks and Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton would eventually return in the amazing movie. Have you ever heard of Multiplicity? Starring Michael Keaton and Andy McDowell. It was filmed in Woodstock, Illinois, and they wanted to film in Punxsutawney, but it just didn't, the town wasn't quite what they were looking for to do it. So they decided to do it in Woodstock, Illinois. This really pissed off Punxsutawney, Philadelphia, but not so much. They didn't want to make sure that it was properly reproduced. So representatives from Punxsutawney went up to Woodstock, Illinois, and said that the film did an amazing job of recreating this situation. And Punxsutawney got the last laugh because their attendance has exploded since this movie, and this actual thing that has been going on for a long time has now turned into a real thing. And I keep forgetting to turn it on and try to find it. Apparently, there is a VR video game for the PlayStation where you play Phil Connor's son and you get trapped in a day loop, and you have to, it's more gamified. So you're actually trying to hunt down clues.
Really?
And figure out how to get out of this loop.
What's it called, the game?
Groundhog Day, like father, like son.
Wow.
And it was just released, and I've been looking for an excuse to get a VR setup for my PlayStation for a while, so this might finally make me pull that trigger.
Huh.
And one last little fun fact, in case you guys out there were wondering just what size of a nerd you're dealing with, I'm holding in my hand. That is a cassette tape holding the audio of Groundhog Day. When I worked at a restaurant in Seattle for a while, there was a bunch of us that were big movie guys. And instead of music, a lot of times we would listen to movies, and we would record the whole thing, the whole movie from credits to credits. We would record them on audio cassette tapes. And there's one guy in particular, Gary, shout out to Gary, ended up making about 100 of these.
Is that like Gary and Wendy?
No,
Is this a different
no,
Gary?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, not me. I wouldn't get drunk at night and record cassette tapes. I mean, I would, but that's not where it came from. And so when I left that job, Gary was starting to then burn them onto CD. And so as my parting gift, he gave me over 100 of these cassette tapes, most of which I have done away with or have been lost at some point. But I have about 20 of them left just to hold every now and then. And Groundhog Day is one of the few that has lasted, just in case I ever come across a cassette.
Yeah, when this movie came out, it was a big deal. It was a big hit, and
yeah,
people went gaga for it.
it really, yeah, I didn't realize how
I mean, it
much of a
makes
hit it
sense.
was.
It was the first of its kind, a looping story. No one had ever seen that before.
And it hit the dramatic and the comedic at
Yeah.
the same time. I think that helped it a lot. So yeah, so that was a little long for my facts, but I'm excited about this movie, and definitely this is the movie I have the most history with up until now.
Yeah.
And it was very, very fun to watch it because I've listened to this movie 100 times.
Yeah.
And I've watched it, 7 or 8. So it was a lot of fun to see it again. So now I'll turn it over to Ari and we'll find out what this film is actually about once it starts rolling.
Groundhog Day. So I saw this movie, I think a really long time ago when I was younger, or I had just seen enough clips of it where I thought I had seen it, because I definitely was watching it and was like, I don't remember any of this part. So yeah, so this movie is about a guy named Phil. He's a weatherman, and he really likes his job. I think he likes being a weatherman, but he is not a nice guy. He's kind of a jerk. And every year he's got to go down to this small town in Philadelphia to do something called Groundhog's Day. Now, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Chicago, and Groundhog's Day is a thing as a kid, especially. They talk about like, oh, if he comes out and sees his shadow, whether he sees it or not, winter is extended, that whole thing. But I'm guessing that people in California and on the West Coast maybe don't know it as much or know about it as much.
That would make sense that they at least didn't. Yeah, they probably knew about it, that it was a thing, but to
really know it as a day of the calendar that is significant and maybe is written in calendars.
Well, because we knew like what it was like to have 2 more months of snow.
Yeah.
So we were like, if any help we can get.
Well, I've been living in California now for 20 years, and no one ever talks about Groundhog's Day because having 2 extra months of winter is not that different, or, because there's no snow.
Very true. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
You don't have seasons. Who cares how long they last?
So seeing this movie, or seeing it again, I can't remember. It was interesting, like, Groundhog's Day. Is he going to see his shadow? Is winter going to be extended? And I really wonder, we should look this up. Where did this come from? How did this start?
It came from Germany.
Oh, you do know.
Well, a little bit. And it's interesting because it's not a groundhog. I think it's a badger.
Okay.
And one of the, I was going through the trivia or the goofs in IMDb, and someone was like, there's a sign in the background in Germany that reads this, which is incorrect because that actually translates to badger, not groundhog.
Yeah.
But then I did more research because I had nothing better to do. And it turns out that this was originally a badger. But when they started the tradition over here, badgers were hard to come by.
Yeah.
So ta-da.
But groundhogs are also hard to come by. Are there even groundhogs in the wild in the Midwest or in the East Coast or where there's snow?
I have come to think of it, I don't think I've seen one in a zoo or in the wild.
I think the only time I've ever seen a groundhog is in a movie.
Yeah, and it's very badger-like now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Phil that was
It
in
almost
this
looks
movie.
like a beaver.
Beaver, that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
It looks like a beaver. They're cute. The little thing was
front
cute. It was cute when it was sitting in the front seat of the truck and he was like looking at the camera. Okay, anyway, so sorry.
I'm just laughing about
Yeah.
it's so hard not to pull a Phil on you. Go, you want to look in a mirror?
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
So yes, this holiday that is mostly probably celebrated in the East Coast and Midwest where there's snow, called Groundhog's Day. For those who have not seen the movie or don't know of it or have lived in California your whole life, this rodent, it looks like a beaver without the tail, comes out of his hole in the ground, and still this is so weird to me how they got this, if the rodent sees his shadow, there is more winter coming, or if he doesn't see his shadow.
I forget which, because I would think that if he sees his shadow, winter is over.
Yeah, because that means
would mean that it's getting warm.
The sun is out and
Yeah.
it's casting a shadow. But I think from this movie, they're like, oh, he saw his shadow. It's going to be 2 more months of winter, and then the blizzard hits or whatever. But this reporter named Phil, who's not a nice guy, has to go down every year to do this reporting, and he's not super thrilled about it. But with him this year is a female producer, whose name in the movie is Rita. And he does the report. He's not super thrilled about it. And he goes to bed and then they try to leave, but they can't leave. He was supposed to leave right after he does the report.
So they go there. Yeah, they go there. They stay the night, wake up in the morning,
do the report. They were supposed to leave that day, but a blizzard hit.
Yes.
An unexpected blizzard hit, blocking the roads. Nobody can leave. So they have to stay in the town.
The blizzard that he promised as a weatherman would not hit them.
Right. So he has to go back to sleep in the same town. And when he wakes up the next morning, the day is repeated. You got the same song on the radio. You got the same announcers saying the same thing they did the morning before. And thus begins the very hilarious movie of Groundhog Day.
Yes.
And it was great. The way that at first he's very confused and then he tries to tell people about it, but no one believes him. And
yeah, the second day, I think he goes through the second day as best he can. Just kind of like it's the worst deja vu he's ever seen.
Yeah.
And then it's day 3 that he really is like, holy crap.
Yeah. So then he starts having fun with it.
Well, he goes
and starts doing what he wants. And like messing with people. And
he goes. Yeah. So third day, he's freaked out. The 4th day, he's just, screw this.
Yeah. He eats whatever he wants. He's smoking.
Eats a bunch of food. And then, oh no, it's even on day 3. Holy mackerel. So on day 3, he gets drunk and goes to jail. And then, that's only on day 3. And then when he wakes up on day 4 back in his bed, that's when he's like, all right.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to party.
Yeah.
There's no consequences. There's no hangovers. No nothing.
And there's one point where, do the bed sheets change?
I kept wanting to keep track of that.
I think they like mess up with like the color of the bed sheets or something.
I think the bed sheets changed. His tie. I was wondering how many ties he had at one point. I was going to start counting those.
Yeah.
But I paid attention to some other stuff, but never.
So then he starts doing bad things. He like steals money from like a bank, the armored car with the money in it, and he's just doing all sorts of bad things. He doesn't care because there's no consequences. No matter where he goes to sleep, he wakes up in that same bed. 6 a.m. the alarm goes off.
He gets to know a woman one day at a time.
Yeah.
Like, finds out her name, finds out where she goes to high school, and then bumps into her at Gobbler's Knob. It's like, Nancy?
Yeah. Tries using the information that he's learned to woo women, essentially.
And he, during this, so he's going on a couple other dates, or at least one other date. He goes to see, do you know what movie he went to see? Heidi 2.
Heidi 2?
Heidi 2.
Dressed as like a pirate or something?
He goes as Bronco.
Oh,
he goes as a cowboy.
As a cowboy, that's right.
And she goes as a maid. But this really struck me because there's no way they would just pick a random movie to put in here.
Okay.
So, first of all, there's no such thing as Heidi 2.
Oh, okay.
As far as any movies that go. But the original Heidi began in Germany, was originally written in 2 parts. Now it's just become a single story that we know. But the first one was Heidi, Her Years of Wandering and Learning. And then Heidi Part 2 was How She Used What She Learned.
So they only made the movie out of the first part?
Well, I think if there is, I don't think they've ever made a theatrical release. I think the only thing I know about a Heidi movie is that it interrupted a New York Jets and an Oakland Raider game at one point. That became the
On
Heidi
TV?
game. Yeah, that became the Heidi game. And that's why now you get to see the end of football games. And no matter how long the game goes, they won't interrupt it and start Heidi at 8 o'clock.
Movie on the TV. Okay.
Yeah. But I just like that her years of wandering and learning, which I think Phil spent quite a long time wandering and learning. And then the second part was how she used what she learned. And he...
Oh, isn't that adorable?
Yeah,
they tied it all together.
See?
Okay, so
Not
then...
too bad.
So then Phil, after he's done like messing around and causing trouble and doing whatever he wants, then he tries to date Rita, the producer woman that's been there with him. And he does, he'll go on a date and learn something about her. And then the next day he'll apply what he learned and then learn something new. And then the next day he'll apply what he learned again. And, throughout the dates, he's like learning French poetry and he's learning what food she likes and, her childhood and all these things. And it's a little deceitful because he's learning all this information that's not true to him in that moment. And, basically trying to get her in bed.
Yeah, he kind of likes her, but
he likes her.
I guess he does like her.
But he's probably not great with women. He's still kind of an asshole. So he's doing, the easy way of just learning all this information to try to get her into bed. So it doesn't work. She doesn't.
It does not work. No. She slaps him. Let me see, I counted 11 times.
Yep.
She slaps him. And then, so after that, and we can assume that it happened a lot more than we saw.
So he finally gets depressed.
Yeah.
And he's finally like, okay, I'm over this. I want this to end. I'm not happy. It's the same thing. And he tries to kill himself.
Many times.
Which was kind of dark. So he tried to jump off a building. He tried to electrocute himself. He tried to jump in front of a truck.
His first, I always forget, his first attempt at suicide was when he killed himself with the groundhog, hoping that might set him free. He's like, the groundhog must be what's keeping me in this loop.
Yeah, so he steals the groundhog and drives him and the groundhog off of a cliff in a truck and it blows up.
And they blow up and then that doesn't work. So then electrocutes himself, steps in front of a truck, jumps off a building. He also says at one point when he's talking to Rita, I've been stabbed, shot, poisoned, frozen, hung, electrocuted, burned, and hanged.
Yeah.
So, a lot of those are things you're not going to do by yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of gruesome too.
So then Rita hangs out with him all day.
Yeah, so
when he finally comes clean,
he tells her, he's like, this is what's happening, and he kind of does things and says things to prove to her that this is true. He knows every possible information about her and all the other people in the town, and and she's like, how are you doing that? We've only been here one day, and you only come here once a year. How do you
hate it?
Yeah, and you hate it here. How do you know all this stuff? And so she finally, I guess, believes him and hangs out with him all day into the night, and it still resets.
Then it resets, but this is the turning point.
Yeah.
This is when he realizes that he really loves her, not just in love with the idea of being with her because he's stuck in this day.
So then he turns good and he starts helping people throughout the town and saving people, and he starts learning piano. Every day he goes and is learning piano and like learning French officially and doing all these good things throughout the town. And then he does so many good things that in that one evening they have a party and everybody at the party knows him. So in the day, like,
so this is the perfect day. We can only imagine it took a year of planning.
They don't tell you how much time has passed, but you assume that for you to learn piano really well and all these other things, years.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I've got some numbers that we'll get into here soon.
At least a couple of years. So if you think about, okay, then finally this one day, he wakes up in the morning, he does the news report about the groundhog, and then throughout the rest of the day, he's doing all these nice things, he's saving all these people, he's making all these connections and friends and meeting people, and then at the end there's a party.
Which this party goes on every night.
Oh, the party was always there?
The party was always there. He was just always too stuck up to either
go.
Stuck up or depressed. I mean, he probably went again in the whole time he was there. He probably went there to at least try to get some at some point.
Yeah.
But this is the first time
So it's like a celebration for the Groundhog's Day festival.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of this party, everybody knows him. He's on stage playing with the band, playing the piano, and he's like saved a bunch of people's lives and
helped old ladies with flat tires,
saved a kid from falling out a tree.
And he does this all in one day.
Yeah.
So he was assuming, at this point, he's assuming that it's got to be the perfect day. Well, and this all starts right after the old man dies.
That's right, the homeless man.
And he dies.
He tries to save the homeless man, but he can't.
Yeah.
And he dies, and he just keeps trying to save people.
And when during one of the resuscitations, because he takes the old man to the hospital once or twice, or we see once, but we can only assume a couple times, he finally just decides to save him himself. He's just going to perform CPR on him. He calls him dad.
What? I missed that.
Yeah. And he's just like, come on, Dad. And then
Bill Murray's character calls
Yeah.
the homeless man dad?
yeah.
That's out of nowhere.
And he says Pops after that. He's like, come on, Pops. But at some point he says, no, Dad, no. And so
All right.
who knows what got rewritten or taken
cut out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That he was, all part, because he's obviously not been the greatest guy up until now. He's always been a selfish
Yeah.
jerk. So, we can only imagine how his relationship with his dad ended. So yeah, that was, and it's from far enough away, it would have been easily overdubbed. Like it was left in. So
So the old man still dies.
That guy, yeah. And so now that it appears that, and they tell him at the hospital, some people just die. Like it's not, and he says not today, but he decides to do everything besides save that guy pretty much.
And then, so that leads to the perfect day, I guess you could say. And Rita this whole time has been witnessing this perfect day, and then the party at the end. And she ends up bidding on him when you can bid for a guy and winning. And
she gets him for $339.88.
And they spend the evening together, and then he says, just sleep over, and she does.
I don't even think he asks her at that point on that night, because I think the last time we see them,
well, when he wakes up the next morning, he's like, you're still here,
right?
And she's like, you asked me to stay, and so I'm here.
That's true, but we just see them walking up to the B&B.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just clicks over to the next morning.
So it worked. He's a nice person. He did all these things. He had a change of heart. Rita saw the true him.
He fell in love with the real her.
Yeah. And it reset everything. And then he wakes up the next morning and she's still sleeping next to him. And it's a different song on the radio.
It's not a different song on the radio.
It's like a fake out.
Yeah.
But he looks out the window and everything's different. And he fixed it.
Ta-da!
The end.
So, and then they decide to live there.
Oh, yeah.
At the end. He says, let's move
live
here.
here.
Let's
Yeah.
live here. Which I thought was crazy.
So my first question, unless you got more of the story.
I'm just going to get into the number of days real
okay.
quick so we can deal with how long this really was. Oh, it is what I consider backwards. If the groundhog sees his shadow, 6 more weeks of winter. So
I don't get that.
I guess if it's shadowy, then it's going to get it out of its system. If it's sunny, it's going to drag on forever, but whatever. So I found a cool YouTube video that explained it in a couple of different ways of how you can count the number of days. Mm-hmm. They did one count where they just counted how many days are in the movie, how many we witness, how many we see. So like the multiple slaps, those are different days. Every time you see an alarm clock, that's a different day. Anytime you can, and they're bunching as many days as they can in this too. So, we'll assume that he went to the doctor and the psychiatrist on the same day because he could have done that. And nowhere in the movie do we see the day reset. So the least amount of days this movie could have been was 33.
Which is so not
it. But let's just do the lowest common denominator. And then the highest number, and then if you go with everything you see is a new day. So then the doctor and the psychiatrist are 2 different days and so on and so forth. Then we're still only up to 91.
Okay.
But then they went through and they're like, okay, let's say it takes you 1,000 days to learn the piano that well. It takes you 7 days to rehearse the bank heist and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Then we're up to 4,576 days, or 12 years, 6 months, and 11 days.
Wow. Okay.
And Harold Ramis, while filming it, said about 10 years. Like they never really settled on a date. But then in later interviews, he said, you know what, it's probably more like 30 or 40 years when you consider all the downtime. Because 10 years, that's staying pretty motivated and waking up every day with a little bit of hope and going to piano lessons and learning people's names and giving a crap.
Yeah, because I'm sure there were days where he just didn't get out of bed at all.
Oh, yeah, you see him watching Jeopardy with a bottle of Jack Daniels and a donut, and like, yeah, that would have been at least 6 months, at least.
Yeah.
if I'm doing this. So now that we got a couple numbers out there, now that we're at the end of the movie, as usual, we're going to start at the end because I always have a big question there. Let's go on the short end, and let's say 10 years you've been doing this. You finally wake up and it's another day. How anxious are you?
Anxious? You'd be flippin' relieved.
No way.
Why?
To have that much certainty, as painful as that is, to have that much certainty in your life for over 10 years. And then, I guess with Rita as his constant, he'll probably be okay. But yeah, I got anxious. thinking about it. And I've never really thought about it like that, but watching as closely as I did for this show, I was like, I'd be a little free. I might just sit in that bed for another day and just take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
Get prepared for the world that awaits me out there.
Yeah, I mean, because you would be able to know every single step, every single word, every single bug and bird that flew by within your world. You would know every single thing, every breath anybody took at what point. I mean, you could do some amazing things. I mean, there was one point where he talked about he thought he was a god. He's like, I'm a god. I cannot die, and I know everything that's going to happen. I'm a god. And
maybe that's God's trick. Maybe God isn't omnipotent.
And that's
maybe
what he said. He's like, maybe God has just been around for a really long time.
Yeah, he just knows everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Yeah, that first day where you don't know what's going to happen would be incredibly overwhelming.
Do you have any hard laws? I mean, other than the basic laws that you're...
With this one?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's just everything resets. He's stuck in a loop within a bubble. We don't know what's happening outside of this town because he can't get out of the town because of the blizzard, right? But he also never tried. As soon as he woke up, he never tried to get out of town right away. At least he never showed that. So, you could get out of town before the blizzard happens, and then, how far do you get before it resets? So he never tried that. But another thing was he never tried to just stay awake.
Yes, thank you.
Which you could do. You could absolutely stay awake if you needed to till 6 a.m. and see what happens.
Day 2, he doesn't fall asleep until 4 a.m. I noticed. I think when he breaks the pencil, so maybe that's day 3. When he breaks the pencil, it's 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So that's right there. Yeah, that would have been a fun scene to have him wake up and just take off, get home to Pittsburgh, go to sleep in his own bed and then wake up in the B&B.
Yeah.
That would have been...
To show that it is not just this little town that's in this loop, but obviously it has to be the whole universe.
Yeah, they block off that, and then they also shut down the long distance lines too. So
that's right. The phones were down because of the blizzard.
I think the hardest thing about this loop would be fending off Rita every day. Do you just wake up and do the news report every day just because that's easier than trying to duck her and Larry all day? I mean, for 10 years...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he did every possible scenario. There were times where he didn't show up for work, and...
But then they would find him, and then that would ruin his afternoon.
Yeah.
I think even no matter how half-assed it was, I think he probably got up and did that more times than not. Just because then he just gets up, he works for 2 hours, the blizzard comes, and then he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. The one thing that this movie didn't do, which I kind of wish they had, was some sort of explanation. Some sort of it was the storm, or, it was some sort of supernatural thing or an event, or even if it was just because he was an asshole and needed to become nicer, there was something that was the catalyst for starting this loop. They didn't do that.
So there's a version of this script out there where they might have even filmed some of this now that I think about it. The studio was really hell-bent on an excuse for this to happen, even though Harold Ramis and the other writer were just like, you know what, we're just going to have some fun. Sorry, Danny Rubin, I want to make sure he gets his due. So there is a version of this where he breaks up with his girlfriend very callously because he's going to quit this rinky-dink TV station and move on up. So he breaks up with her, and she casts a spell on him that subjects him to this day. And she specifically, I think, says, did she say 10,000 years? God, I feel like in the script it was 10,000 years.
10,000 years?
I think so.
Wow.
If not that, it's 10,000. It might have been 10,000 days, which then we're back to the 10-year thing. But yeah, so there was a version out there. But I think it works. I think it just makes it more of a universal story because, it is just about a man trying to be better. Yeah. And that's something I think most of us can get behind and relate to instead of just being like, curses are fake. Never mind.
Yeah.
And then holes, the biggest holes with this movie for me is his ability to do everything at the exact same time every day. Because there's so much of what he does that's dependent on him, coming out of his room at the exact same moment every morning and running into that guy at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. You know,
But if you have 10 years to perfect it.
well, when he's perfecting it, yeah. But even at the beginning, when things are just happenstance,
Yeah.
you know, like
The timing of everything.
yeah, like day 2, I wouldn't have left my room until the last second, or I would have ran out of my room to see what was going on and probably not bumped into that guy at the top of the stairs again. In the B&B, there is a stitching, some kind of artwork. I'm trying to think of the cross stitch or something on the wall. It's fairly large, and they zoom past it a couple times, and there's a scene towards the end where they don't even really focus on it, but they let you see it. It just says unselfishness. So the sire of the ceremony, he chokes. What happened to him every other time Bill Murray wasn't right there?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, I think we'd assume he doesn't die, but who
Yeah.
got that piece of meat out of him? Because everyone there was just ready to watch him choke to death.
Yeah, or
until-
the kid falling out of the tree.
yeah. That kid's just mangled. The big question, are these timelines continuing?
Well, if it's a loop, no, they all reset.
But it's just his loop.
They're all stuck in this loop. Everyone's stuck in the loop. He's just aware of the reset.
You think so?
Yeah.
So there isn't 1,000 Ritas out there that have to deal with, not really deal with, but just,
If it's a loop, it just resets. It's one timeline looping back on itself. Nobody ages. Everything just starts over. And the only person that has a memory of all the loops is Bill Murray.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess, because I was definitely looking at it more as a time travel where he time travels every night back 24 hours.
I mean, you could argue that loop is still time travel.
That doesn't really make sense because then he would be hungover or worse for wear. Like he definitely wakes up just like he did the previous night.
Oh yeah, he died and
Yeah.
then just woke up the same way. So it's a loop. It's resetting.
Okay.
And, you do that for whatever, 10 years or 20 years or whatever it was, and he doesn't age.
So the entire universe just stops.
The entire universe. Yep.
Wow. I guess you've convinced me because I wasn't overly convinced that all these timelines were continuing, but I just had to assume that everyone else in the town was able to move on with their life.
No, that's the whole thing about a loop. That's why it's so interesting is that it all reset. Everything has to reset. It can't just be the town.
But it can't, you don't think it splits? I mean, it could reset and split, couldn't it?
I mean, yeah, theoretically, absolutely. It could.
Because what if he's just jumping timelines?
And they're all just 24 hours behind each other, behind each
Yeah.
other, behind each other, behind each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That could theoretically be a thing. And he's experiencing the different timelines in alternate universes,
But they're all identical.
but they're all exactly identical.
Yeah, if they were alternate universes, something would be different. Ned would be a rock star in one of those universes.
Yeah, it's a time loop.
God, I guess so. Yeah, I just didn't imagine that. Yeah, all these other people are basically trapped in their existence as well. Ooh, I don't like that. I don't want to be. I'll be trapped in my loop.
Yeah.
That's fine. Being trapped in someone else's loop.
But without knowing, we could be stuck in a loop right now. We could have done this so many millions of times and never know it. Dun dun dun.
Whose loop are we in?
Exactly.
Are we in Scott's? We're in Scott's loop.
We're in
I
Scott's
think
loop.
we're in Scott's loop.
And he's not telling us.
Yeah.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb.
Thank you so much for listening to Time Pop. Please rate and subscribe to Time Pop and tell a neighbor or friend about it so you can enjoy a discussion of your own on the topic of time travel. I do my best to post Sunday about Wednesday's release so you can plan ahead. Right now, we are thinking about predestination, but don't quote me on that. Stay alert Sunday to see what we're going to do. That means the predestination is coming. We just want to have a guest on that one, so we need to line a few things up. If you would like to add to the podcast conversation, please email us at timepop9216@gmail.com. That's timepop9216@gmail. And tell us your thoughts about this or any other depiction of time travel and how you might use it. And definitely let us know about a time travel, movie, book, game, etc. that we might discuss on a future episode. And if you would like to start your own discussion on the topic, please head over to Face, Insta, Twitter book. We are at tpop9216. That's at tpop9216. And yes, email us some questions if you have them. We are planning around the holiday season, we're going to do some mail call episodes and get some questions answers. We've got a few questions in so far, and I know a lot of people are catching up. A lot of people just heard of us and you're listening to some old episodes, so you're not sure if your questions are going to be timely. Please feel free to send in any questions you have about old episodes, general questions if you want to know more about Ari and I, if you want to know if you want to get your bid in for next season, send us your requests. We are definitely looking for requests. We've got a lot of great movies lined up, but if you guys want to hear them, that makes them the right movies for us. So please send in those questions or comments or inquiries, whatever you might have. Again, that is timepop9216@gmail.com. And also check out soundsawesome9216.com to hear what else sounds awesome. I'm currently working on a couple other podcasts. One of them is really close to launch. If you've listened to our Avengers episode or our Free Jack episode, then you know Mr. Scott Lifton's voice. He and I are working on another movie-based podcast, and then I'm going to break out beyond the movie brand of podcasts, and we'll see where that leads me. So please stay tuned for those. And now, back to the big finish.
Okay, campers, rise and shine, and don't forget your booties, 'cause it's cold out there.
It's cold out there every day. What is this, Miami Beach?
Not hardly.
Just some fun little notes. The clock behind him where he sits in the diner most of the time, there's one clock set to 6:55 and there's one clock set to 11:30, which put the hands in the exact same place. I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing that they did, just to kind of be like, I don't know why I thought that was interesting, but
Easier for continuity.
it definitely made it easier for continuity. But I like that they put the hands in the same opposite place. Oh, you know who likes sweet vermouth on the rocks with a twist? Mrs. Ramus,
Who's Mrs. Ramus?
the director's wife.
Okay.
That's her favorite drink. So that's where that came from. Isn't that cute? All right.
Cool.
Easy peasy. We'll see you guys next week.
Cool.
I am Desmond McNeese.
I'm Ariel Gala. Bye. Oh, isn't that adorable? They tied it all
Yeah,
together.
See?
The end.